Test the given claim. Identify the null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, test statistic, p-value, and then state the conclusion about the null hypothesis, as well as the final conclusion that addresses the original claim. Among 2,036 passenger cars in a particular region, 234 had only rear license plates. Among 309 commercial trucks, 46 had only rear license plates. A reasonable hypothesis is that commercial truck owners violate laws requiring front license plates at a higher rate than owners of passenger cars. Use a 0.01 significance level to test that hypothesis. In the A part, we are to test the claim using a hypothesis test, and then in the B part, test the claim by constructing an appropriate confidence interval. So we should begin by organizing the information that we are given in the problem. We are given a number of successes out of a number of observations for the two groups, passenger cars and commercial vehicles. We will label the passenger cars as Group 1 and the commercial vehicles as Group 2. We will assume that all of the assumptions are met for using the normal distribution to approximate this hypothesized distribution. We are testing whether or not there is a difference between these two proportions, and specifically whether or not the population proportion for Group 2 is greater than that for Group 1. If that's the case, then that difference would be negative, and therefore we would have a one-tailed test, and the entire alpha equal to 0.01 would be located in the left tail. So our null hypothesis would be P1 minus P2 equal to 0, and our alternative hypothesis would be P1 minus P2 less than 0. We can use Statcrunch to find the test statistic. So we'll press Stat, go to Proportion Stats, to Sample with Summary. It is important that we maintain the orientation that we started with when we labeled our variables. The number of successes for Group 1 was 234. The number of observations for Group 1 was 2,036. The number of successes for Group 2 was 46, and the number of observations for Group 2 was 309. Make sure that hypothesis test is selected. Our hypothesized difference is 0, and we need to make sure that the alternative hypothesis is specified correctly as less than. Now click Compute. We find that the z-statistic is minus 1.71 if we round to 2 decimal places, and our p-value is 0.0432 if we round to 4 decimal places. So since the p-value is not less than alpha, we will not reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, our conclusion would be sufficient evidence was not gathered at the 0.01 level of significance to conclude that commercial truck owners violate laws requiring front license plates at a higher rate than passenger cars. If we are to construct a confidence interval that would lead us to the same conclusion, we have to recall that a confidence interval would have alpha split out into the two tails. If we are to arrive at the same conclusion, then we would need to make sure that the critical value that we use to compare to the test value would be the same. If that's the case, then we need to maintain an area of 0.01 in the left tail, which means then that we would have the same area in the right tail. So alpha over 2 would be 0.01. This would give us 98% of the distribution between those two critical values. So when we construct our confidence interval, we would need to make sure that it is a 98% confidence interval. So using the same values for Group 1 and Group 2, we would then select confidence interval and make sure that our confidence level is 98. Click Compute, and this gives us a lower limit of minus 0.0838 to 4 decimal places and an upper limit of 0.0160 to 4 decimal places. But the significance of this interval is that it contains 0. Therefore, using this interval, we are not led to the conclusion that a difference exists between the population parameters. This is the same conclusion that the hypothesis test led us to.